frozen wings and legs. The human bent down and discovered the impossible. Part 1. The ice moon of 7 had been declared lifeless 300 years ago. Every survey team that landed on its frozen surface found the same thing: nothing but ice, rock, and silence. The Galactic Union marked it as a dead world and moved on to more interesting places. No one came back to check if they were wrong. Lieutenant Grace did not expect to find anything special when her team landed on the surface. She was there to map underground thermal vents for a mining company that wanted to extract rare minerals. It was boring work, but it paid well, and Grace had learned long ago that boring work kept you alive in space. Her team was small. Danny was her, a quiet man with gentle hands and a mind that never stopped asking questions. Pete was her engineer, a large fellow who could fix anything with enough wire and patience. They had worked together for 3 years and trusted each other completely. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was clear and dark, filled with the light of distant stars. The next moment, ice and wind screamed across the surface like angry ghosts. Grace ordered her team into the nearest cave system, and they ran through the howling white until they found shelter. The cave was old. Grace could tell by the way the ice had formed on the walls, layer upon layer built up over thousands of years. She turned on her helmet light and looked around. The walls sparkled like diamonds in the beam. Danny was checking his equipment. Pete was already looking for a place to set up a temporary camp. Grace walked deeper into the cave, curious about its shape. Something felt different here. The air was warmer than it should have been, and there was a strange smell that her suit filters could not identify. She found the patterns first. They ran along the walls in flowing lines, too regular to be natural formations. Grace traced them with her gloved finger and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. These were not random. Someone had made them. Grace called Danny over. He looked at the patterns and frowned. His scanner could not identify the material that formed the lines. It was organic, but it matched nothing in the Union database. Danny suggested they were mineral deposits shaped by water flow over millions of years. Grace did not believe him, and she could tell he did not believe himself either. She kept walking. The patterns led her deeper into the cave, down a slope that curved gently into darkness. Her light caught something at the bottom, a pool of ice, perfectly smooth like a mirror made of frozen water. Grace knelt beside it and looked down. Her breath stopped in her chest. There was something beneath the ice, a creature unlike anything she had ever seen or imagined. It had wings made of what looked like crystal, thin and delicate as flower petals. 6 legs were tucked beneath its body, segmented and graceful. Its face was almost human in shape, but the features were too fine, too perfect to belong to any species Grace knew. The creature was curled into itself like a sleeping child. Its eyes were closed, and its wings were wrapped around its body like a blanket. It looked peaceful, as if it had simply decided to rest and would wake up at any moment. Grace placed her hand on the ice. She expected to feel nothing but cold. Instead, she felt warmth. Faint but real, pulsing slowly like a distant heartbeat. She pulled her hand back and stared at the creature with wide eyes. It was alive. After 300 years in frozen darkness, this being was still alive. Danny arrived at her side and nearly fell over when he saw what lay beneath the ice. His scientific training failed him completely. He could only stand there with his mouth open, trying to understand what his eyes were telling him. Pete came next, and the big engineer sat down heavily on the ice as if his legs had forgotten how to hold him up. Grace made them promise not to report the discovery yet. The Union had strict rules about unknown species. If they called this in, ships would arrive within hours. Scientists and soldiers would swarm over the cave. The creature would be taken away, studied, possibly dissected to learn its secrets. Grace had seen it happen before with other discoveries. The Union valued knowledge, but it valued control even more. Danny argued with her. He said they had a duty to report what they found. This could be the greatest discovery in galactic history. How could they keep it to themselves? Grace listened to his words and understood his point. But when she looked at the creature sleeping beneath the ice, she felt something she could not explain. A need to protect it. A sense that this being deserved better than to become a specimen in some laboratory. Pete sided with Grace. He said the Union would have 300 more years to study dead ice if they wanted. Right now, they had something alive and wonderful, and they should figure out what it was before anyone else got involved. They explored deeper into the cave. What they found made their hearts race with fear and excitement. More creatures, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, all frozen in the same position, all wrapped in their crystal wings, all sleeping in the endless cold. Danny ran his scanner over the nearest group. The readings made no sense at first. Then he understood and his face went pale. These creatures had not been caught by accident in the ice. Their bodies showed no signs of struggle or distress. They had chosen to freeze themselves. This was not death. This was preservation. Grace stood in the middle of that frozen garden and felt the weight of something ancient pressing down on her. These beings had put themselves to sleep on purpose. They were waiting for something, or hiding from something. Either way, they had trusted that someone would eventually find them and wake them up. She looked at Danny and Pete. Both men were scared. She could see it in their eyes, but she could also see something else. The same wonder that filled her own heart. They had come to this dead moon looking for rocks and minerals. Instead, they had found a miracle. Grace made her decision. They would stay. They would learn what they could. And when the time was right, they would try to wake the sleepers and ask them why they had chosen to dream for 300 years in the frozen dark. The storm continued to rage outside. Inside the cave, 3 humans sat among hundreds of sleeping aliens and waited for morning to come. None of them slept that night. They were too busy watching the impossible breathe. Frozen wings and legs. The human bent down and discovered the impossible. Part 2. Grace worked through the night with her team to understand what they had found. Danny took readings from every angle, trying to make sense of biology that did not follow any rules he knew. Pete examined the ice itself and discovered something strange. The frozen water was not normal ice. It contained compounds that no one had ever seen before, substances that seemed to slow time itself within their crystal structure. The first creature Grace had found became their focus. It lay closest to the surface, and its warmth was stronger than the others. Danny believed it might be some kind of leader or guardian, placed near the entrance to be the first to wake if anyone came looking. They decided to try warming it slowly. Danny calculated that a gentle increase in temperature over several hours might safely revive the creature without damaging its delicate body. It was a guess based on nothing but hope, but Grace trusted his instincts. Danny had never been wrong about living things. Pete built a heating frame from spare parts in their equipment packs. He wrapped the ice pool in thin wires that would raise the temperature 1 degree at a time. Grace watched the process with her heart pounding in her chest. She felt like she was watching someone try to wake a sleeping god. While they worked, the Union outpost on the nearby planet grew suspicious. Commander received reports that the human survey team had gone silent during the storm. This was not unusual by itself. Storms on 7 blocked most communications, but had learned to watch humans carefully. They had a reputation throughout the galaxy for finding things they should not find and keeping secrets they should not keep. Was a reptilian species known for their careful thinking and long memories. His people had served the Union for thousands of years as administrators and peacekeepers. They valued order above all else. Humans, with their chaos and curiosity, made nervous. He sent a message to the human ship in orbit, requesting a status update. The response came back normal, but something in the pilot's voice seemed off. Decided to prepare a security team. If the humans had found something interesting, he wanted to know about it before they had a chance to hide it. Back in the cave, The ice was beginning to change. The surface grew soft and wet as the temperature rose. Grace could see the creature more clearly now. Its skin was the color of pale moonlight, smooth and perfect. Its wings caught the light from her helmet lamp and scattered it into rainbows that danced on the cave walls. Then the creature opened its eyes. Grace had expected many things. She had prepared herself for fear, confusion, or even violence. She had not prepared herself for what she actually saw. The creature's eyes were deep violet, filled with an intelligence so vast and ancient that Grace felt like a child standing before an elder of unimaginable age. Those eyes looked at her, and she knew with complete certainty that they understood exactly what they were seeing. The creature did not speak with its mouth. Its lips remained still, but Grace heard words inside her mind. They were not in any language she knew, but she understood them perfectly. The voice was soft and tired, like someone waking from a very long sleep. "Has the darkness passed?" Grace did not know what darkness the creature meant. She looked at Danny and Pete, but they seemed frozen in place, staring at the awakened being with wonder on their faces. She realized the question was meant for her alone. She answered honestly. Her people had traveled the stars for 2 centuries, she said. They had found many things in the void between worlds: danger and beauty, life and death, friends and enemies. But they had never found a great darkness. Only the endless light of distant suns, shining in the black forever. The creature studied her face for a long moment. Then something changed in its expression. The fear that Grace had not noticed before slowly faded away. In its place came something like relief, or perhaps hope. "You are new," the creature said in her mind. "Your species was not here when we went asleep. What are you called?" Grace told it that her people were called humans. They came from a small blue world called Earth, far away in another arm of the galaxy. They had joined the Union only 200 years ago and were still learning their place among the older species. The creature seemed to consider this information carefully. Then it tried to move. Its wings unfolded slowly, shedding drops of water that fell like tears onto the cave floor. Its legs stretched and trembled with the effort of working again after so long. Danny rushed forward to help, but Grace held him back. She sensed that the creature needed to do this on its own. It needed to remember how to be alive. After several minutes, the creature stood on its 6 legs. It was taller than Grace had expected, nearly 2 meters from feet to the top of its elegant head. Its wings spread wide, filling the cave with their crystal beauty. For a moment, Grace forgot to breathe. "I am called Elder," the creature said. "I am one of the keepers of the old songs. We slept to escape the hollow. We trusted that someone would find us when it was safe to wake." Grace asked what the hollow was. Elder's violet eyes grew dark with memory. "The hollow was hunger given form," Elder explained. "It came from beyond the edge of the galaxy, from the empty places between the stars. It consumed everything it touched: worlds, species, entire civilizations. We fought it for 10,000 years, but we could not win. So we ran. We scattered ourselves across hidden worlds and slept, hoping the hollow would pass us by." Grace felt cold despite the warmth of her suit. She looked at the hundreds of others still sleeping in the ice and understood what she was seeing. These were refugees, survivors of a war so terrible that freezing themselves for centuries had seemed like the better choice. Elder turned to look at the other sleepers, its expression filled with sadness. "We sent signals to each other," Elder said. "When the danger passed, the signals would wake us. But I heard nothing for so long. I feared we were the last ones left." Grace stepped forward and placed her hand on Elder's arm. The skin was cool and smooth beneath her fingers. "You are not alone anymore," she said. "We will help you wake the others. We will help you find out what happened to your people." Elder looked down at the human woman who barely reached its shoulder. Something shifted in those ancient violet eyes. Perhaps it was gratitude. Perhaps it was the beginning of trust. Before they could say more, Pete's communicator crackled with static. A voice came through, cold and official. Commander announced that a Union security team was en route to their location. They were ordered to remain in place and make no contact with any unknown entities. Grace looked at Elder. The creature's wings folded tight against its back. Its eyes turned toward the cave entrance, where the storm still howled. "Your people do not know we are here," Elder said. It was not a question. "No," Grace admitted, "and I do not know if they will be as welcoming as we are." Elder nodded slowly. "Then we must decide together what happens next. That is how trust begins." Frozen wings and legs. The human bent down and discovered the impossible. Part 3. Elder told them the story of the while they waited for the Union forces to arrive. Grace and her team sat on the cold cave floor and listened to a history that stretched back millions of years. They had been the first great civilization in this part of the galaxy. When other species were still learning to use fire, they were building cities that floated among the clouds. They were artists and philosophers who believed that beauty was the highest form of truth. They created wonders that the modern galaxy had never imagined. Great temples of living crystal, ships that sailed on currents of light, songs that could heal the sick and bring peace to troubled minds. They spread across 10,000 worlds, but they never conquered anyone. They believed in harmony with all living things. They helped younger species grow and learn, asking nothing in return except friendship. Then the Hollow came. Elder's voice grew heavy when it spoke of those days. The Hollow was not a species or an army. It was something older and stranger, a force of pure emptiness that consumed everything it touched. No one knew where it came from or what it wanted. It simply appeared at the galaxy's edge and began to spread inward like a shadow swallowing the stars. They fought back with everything they had. Their beautiful ships became weapons of war. Their peaceful songs became battle cries. For 10,000 years, they held the line against the darkness, buying time for the younger species to grow strong enough to defend themselves. But the cost was too high. Billions of died in the endless war. Their great cities fell silent one by one. Finally, the surviving elders made a terrible choice. They would freeze themselves on hidden worlds and wait for the Hollow to pass. Those who remained awake would make one final sacrifice to push the darkness back. "We called it the Burning," Elder said. "Our greatest among us gave their own light to create a barrier the Hollow could not cross. They became like stars, blazing with power until nothing remained of them but memory. And it worked. The Hollow retreated beyond the galaxy's edge, unable to breach the wall of fire our people had created." Grace felt tears forming in her eyes. She thought of all those ancient beings who had given everything to save a galaxy that would never know their names. They had died so that species like humanity could one day reach the stars. Elder looked at the sleeping forms around them. These survivors were supposed to wake when signals from other hidden worlds confirmed the danger had passed. But the signals never came. Either the other sleepers had been destroyed, or something had gone wrong with the awakening system. "We have been alone in the dark for 300 of your years," Elder said. "I had given up hope that anyone would find us. Then you came. You bent down and looked into the ice. You saw us sleeping there, and instead of fear, I felt curiosity and kindness from your mind. That is why I answered your call." Danny asked how they could read human thoughts. Elder explained that their species had always been sensitive to the emotions of others. It was part of how they created such beautiful art. They could feel what others felt and express it in forms that touched the heart. Pete wanted to know about the ancient ruins found on 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. Were those cities? Elder confirmed that they were. The ruins were all that remained of a civilization that had once lit up the darkness with beauty and hope. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps at the cave entrance. Commander appeared with 6 armed soldiers behind him. His reptilian eyes swept across the cave and stopped when they saw Elder standing among the humans. Scales turned pale with shock. They had old legends about winged beings who had built the ancient ruins. They called them the architects and believed they had ascended to a higher plane of existence. To see one standing before him in the flesh was something had never imagined possible. "What is this?" demanded. His voice shook despite his efforts to control it. "What have you found here?" Grace stepped forward and placed herself between an elder. She explained what had happened, how they had discovered the frozen during the storm. She told him about the hollow and the sacrifice they had made to save the galaxy. Listened with growing disbelief. When Grace finished, he stood in silence for a long moment. Then he activated his communicator and contacted the Union Council directly. The response came within minutes. The council was shocked by the news. They ordered to secure the site and prevent any contact with the alien creatures until a proper research team could arrive. They were to be treated as a potential threat until proven otherwise. Grace argued against the order. These beings were not a threat, she said. They were survivors who needed help. They had given everything to protect the galaxy from a horror beyond imagination. How could the Union repay that sacrifice with suspicion and cages? Shook his head. He understood her feelings, but he had his orders. The council had spoken, and he could not disobey. Elder watched the exchange with its ancient violet eyes. It did not seem surprised by the Union's reaction. Perhaps it had seen too many civilizations rise and fall to expect anything different from those in power. Grace turned to face the elder. She made a decision in that moment that would change everything. She asked Elder if there was a way to contact other survivors across the galaxy. Elder nodded slowly. There was a signal, a song encoded in the very essence of their being. If they could amplify it with enough power, it might reach the other hidden worlds. But they would need technology far beyond what the humans possessed. Pete spoke up. He said he could modify their ship's communication array to broadcast the signal. It would not be easy, but he had never met a problem he could not solve with enough wire and patience. Ordered them to stop. He raised his weapon and aimed it at Grace. "I cannot allow this," he said. "You are interfering with Union protocol." Grace looked at the weapon pointed at her chest. She looked at Elder standing tall and beautiful in the dim light. She looked at the hundreds of sleepers waiting to be awakened. Then she looked at and smiled. "Sometimes," she said, "protocol is wrong." Frozen wings and legs. The human bent down and discovered the impossible. Part 4. The cave fell silent after Grace spoke, kept his weapon raised, but uncertainty flickered in his reptilian eyes. His soldiers shifted nervously behind him, unsure what to do. They had been trained to follow orders, but nothing in their training had prepared them for this moment. Grace did not move. She stood between the Union commander and the ancient being she had promised to help. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice remained steady when she spoke again. "Commander," she said, "you know the legends of your people. You know what the architects meant to the galaxy before they disappeared. Now you have a chance to help them return. Is following orders really more important than that?" His weapon wavered. Grace could see the conflict playing out behind his cold eyes. He was a creature of duty and discipline, but he was also his people had the memory of for thousands of generations. To see one standing before him, alive and real, had shaken something deep inside his soul. Elder stepped forward. Its wings caught the dim light and scattered it into patterns that danced across the cave walls. When it spoke, its voice echoed in the minds of everyone present. "We did not ask to be found," Elder said. "We did not ask for your help, but we are grateful for it. The human woman showed us kindness when she could have shown fear. She reached out her hand when she could have walked away. This is not a small thing. In my long life, I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy each other over pride and territory. But I have also seen moments of grace that shine brighter than any star. This is one of those moments." Lowered his weapon slowly. His scales had returned to their normal color, but his expression remained troubled. He told Grace that he could not help her openly. If the council learned that he had disobeyed orders, his career would be finished. His family would suffer disgrace. Grace nodded. She understood the weight of what she was asking, but she also knew that some things were more important than careers and reputations. Danny approached and spoke quietly. He pointed out that the commander could simply report that the situation was under control. He did not have to lie, just delay his next update until they had finished what they needed to do. By the time the council sent another team, the signal would already be sent. Considered this for a long moment. Then he ordered his soldiers to secure the cave entrance and prevent anyone from entering or leaving. He told them that he needed time to assess the situation properly before making his full report. The soldiers obeyed without question. They took up positions at the entrance, their weapons pointed outward at the storm that still raged across the ice moon. Pete did not waste any time. He grabbed his toolkit and headed for the surface, where their ship waited in a small crater protected from the worst of the wind. Danny helped him carry equipment through the howling ice while Grace stayed with Elder in the cave. The work took hours. Pete had to reconfigure the entire communication array to broadcast on frequencies the Union had never used. Elder provided the specifications for the signal, describing patterns of energy that Pete had never imagined possible. It was like trying to teach music to someone who had only ever heard noise. Grace used the time to wake more of the sleeping. Following Elder's instructions, she carefully warmed the ice around each frozen form, allowing them to thaw slowly and safely. One by one, they opened their violet eyes and looked upon a galaxy that had changed beyond recognition while they dreamed. Each awakened had questions. They wanted to know about the hollow, about the burning, about what had happened to their people on other worlds. Elder answered as best it could, but there was little comfort in its words. The truth was that they did not know what had happened to the others. They could only hope that the signal would reach someone somewhere who still remembered how to answer. By the time Pete finished his work, 17 stood in the cave with Elder. They were thin and weak from their long sleep, but their eyes burned with determination. They had survived the impossible once before. They were ready to do it again. Pete connected his modified array to this awakening song. When Elder began to sing, the sound was unlike anything the humans had ever heard. It was not music in any normal sense. It was emotion made audible, hope and sorrow and love woven together into a pattern that seemed to reach beyond the boundaries of ordinary space. The signal pulsed outward at speeds that union physics. It shot past planets and through nebulae, carrying its message to the farthest edges of the galaxy. Pete's instruments could barely track it before it disappeared into the infinite dark. Then something unexpected happened. Responses began to arrive almost immediately, not from other, but from species across the galaxy who had somehow felt the signal touch their minds. The water dwellers reported that their entire population had stopped what they were doing at the exact same moment, overwhelmed by a feeling of profound peace. The silicon-based claimed that their crystal matrices were resonating with frequencies they had never detected before. Even isolated human colony ships sent confused messages, asking what strange dream had passed through their sleeping crews. Elder listened to the reports with growing wonder. The signal was not just a wake-up call, it explained. It was something the ancient had built into their very essence, a reminder of what the galaxy had once been, before fear and division tore it apart. Watched everything from his position near the cave entrance. His communicator buzzed constantly with demands for updates, but he ignored them. He was seeing something that his ancestors had only dreamed about. He was watching history being rewritten in front of his eyes. The Union Council eventually demanded a direct response. They wanted to know why had not secured the alien creatures as ordered. They wanted to know why strange signals were spreading across Union space. They wanted answers. Looked at Grace. The human woman stood among the awakened, helping them adjust to their new reality. She had risked everything to give these ancient beings a chance at survival. She had trusted her instincts over her orders, her heart over her duty. Made his choice. He told the council that the situation was contained, but not in the way they expected. He told them that something wonderful was happening on Seven, something that could change everything the Union thought it knew about the galaxy and its history. The council demanded clarification, smiled for the first time since arriving on the ice moon. "You will have to come see for yourselves," he said. "Some things cannot be explained, they can only be witnessed." Frozen wings and legs, the human bent down and discovered the impossible. Part 5. The weeks that followed changed everything Grace thought she knew about her place in the galaxy. The signal that Elder had sent reached farther than anyone imagined. On 17 different worlds, hidden pockets of sleeping began to wake. They emerged from ice caves and underground chambers, blinking at sunlight they had not seen for 3 centuries. The numbers were small, perhaps 10,000 survivors out of a civilization that had once numbered in the trillions, but they were alive, against all odds, against the darkness that had tried to consume everything that had endured. The Union Council arrived on Seven with a fleet of ships and an army of scientists. They came expecting to find a threat that needed to be contained. Instead, they found something that made them question everything their civilization had built. Elder welcomed the council representatives into the cave where it had slept for so long. The ancient being spoke to them without words, letting them feel the weight of history directly in their minds. Some of the council members wept openly when they experienced the burning, the moment when millions of had sacrificed themselves to push back the hollow. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they had witnessed. They did not ask for territory or power. They did not demand compensation for their sacrifice or recognition for saving the galaxy. They asked only for a place to exist, a chance to rebuild what they had lost over the long centuries of war and sleep. Grace watched the negotiations with mixed feelings. She was proud of what she had helped accomplish, but she knew that her actions would have consequences. She had disobeyed direct orders from the Union Council. She had helped an unknown species send signals across Union space without authorization. In any normal circumstance, she would face court-martial and imprisonment. The summons came on the 3rd week after the awakening. Grace was ordered to appear before the full council to explain her actions. Danny and Pete offered to speak on her behalf, but Grace told them to stay with the. Whatever happened to her, the work of helping the survivors was more important than her personal fate. The council chamber was enormous, designed to intimidate anyone who stood before its curved walls. Representatives from 100 species sat in tiered rows, looking down at Grace like judges preparing to deliver a sentence. Commander was there too, standing at attention in his formal uniform. The lead council member, an ancient whose crystal body glowed with inner light, read out the charges against Grace. Insubordination, interference with first contact protocols, unauthorized communication across Union space. Each charge carried penalties that could see her locked away for decades. Grace listened calmly. When the finished speaking, she was given the chance to defend herself. She could have apologized. She could have claimed she was acting under stress or confusion. Instead, she told the truth. She described finding Elder frozen beneath the ice. She described the warmth she had felt pulsing through the ancient creature's body, the proof that life still existed where everyone had said there was none. She described the choice she had faced, between following rules that would have condemned them to laboratory cages, or trusting her own heart and offering them kindness. "I did not do this for glory or reward," Grace said. "I did it because it was right. When I looked at that creature sleeping in the ice, I saw something that needed help. I saw something beautiful that the galaxy had forgotten. And I knew that if I walked away, if I let protocol decide this creature's fate, I would never forgive myself." The council chamber fell silent. Grace could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, judging her, trying to decide if she was a hero or a criminal. Then Elder walked into the chamber. They had not been invited. Guards moved to stop it, but something in Elder's presence made them hesitate. The ancient being walked through the room on its 6 graceful legs, its crystal wings folded against its back, its violet eyes fixed on the council members above. "I have a story to tell," Elder said in the minds of everyone present. "It is a story about my people and the choice we made long ago. But it is also a story about the humans and what they have shown me since I awakened." Elder spoke of the war against the Hollow. It described the terror of watching entire worlds consumed by emptiness, the despair of fighting an enemy that could not be reasoned with or defeated. It told of the final sacrifice, when the souls among them had given their own light to create a barrier against the darkness. "But they were not perfect," Elder continued. "We believed we were the guardians of the galaxy, but we made our choices alone. We did not ask other species what they wanted. We did not share our knowledge or our plans. We assumed we knew best, and in our pride, we nearly lost everything." Elder turned to look at Grace. This human did not assume she knew best. When she found me sleeping in the ice, she did not try to control me or use me for her own purposes. She asked me what I needed. She listened to my answers. She offered help without demanding anything in return. In all my years, across all the species I have known, I have rarely seen such simple, honest kindness. The chamber remained silent. Elder walked closer to the council's raised platform. "The choose to speak with one voice to this new galaxy. We choose humanity as that voice. Not because they are the strongest or the most advanced. We choose them because they bent down. When they saw us lying frozen and helpless, they did not stand above us in judgment. They knelt beside us and asked how they could help." The council deliberated for hours. Grace waited in a small room with nothing but her thoughts for company. She had made peace with whatever sentence they might deliver. She had done what she believed was right. That had to be enough. When the verdict came, Grace could not believe what she was hearing. All charges were dropped. The council had decided that her actions, while technically illegal, had resulted in one of the most important events in galactic history. Punishing her would send the wrong message to every other species watching to see how the Union handled this moment. Grace returned to 7 the next day. The ice moon was already transforming. Construction methods, powered by techniques that modern science could not explain, were raising towers of living crystal from the frozen ground. Humans worked alongside the ancient beings, learning and teaching in equal measure. Elder found Grace standing at the entrance to the original cave where everything had begun. The Elder stood beside her in comfortable silence, watching as a new city rose from the ice. "You have given us hope," Elder said, "a chance to begin again." Grace shook her head. "You gave yourselves that chance 300 years ago when you chose to sleep instead of surrender. I just happened to be the one who found you." Elder's wings rustled softly. "Perhaps, but you chose to help when you could have walked away. That choice matters, Grace. It will always matter." Grace thought about everything that had happened since she landed on this dead moon looking for rocks and minerals. She thought about the frozen pool of ice and the beautiful creature sleeping beneath it. She thought about the moment she had placed her hand on the surface and felt warmth pulsing through the cold. She had bent down that day expecting nothing. She had discovered the impossible and decided to believe in it anyway. On the last page of her mission report, Grace wrote a single observation. Sometimes miracles are waiting for someone to find them. Sometimes all you have to do is kneel down, reach out your hand, and ask if you can help. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in a very long time, that felt like a good thing.